My name is Andrew Perlott. Welcome to Socratic State of Mind. Virtuous tricks that convince the obese to eat better food, helping people struggling with weight loss by sticking it to the man. Quote, of all corporeal operations, digestion is the one which has the closest connection with the moral condition of man. Jean Anthony Brillat-Savarin, The Physiology of Taste. First off, Muhahah, I feel so Machiavellian writing that headline. It's bunk, of course, because you can't trick people into virtue, but some tricks might help them realize they want to be virtuous. They might open a Pandora's box of things worth striving for that are hard to unsee. So far in this series, we've determined that most of the things talking heads claim drive our obesity epidemic miss the mark, identified a group of Christians who place moral aspersions on food choice and end up dramatically thinner, and talked about a non-religious approach to making every decision, including food decisions, freighted with similar non-dogmatic meaning and morality, virtue. And if you are listening rather than reading, know that I have placed links to those articles in the original piece, which you can find in the podcast notes. So now we're going to move from theory to practice, or at least one aspect of that practice. I have no silver bullet for healthy eating adherence, and no one does. And as they say, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Speeches are incapable of exhorting the many to the beautiful and the good. That's Aristotle. Many of humanity's automatic wins have been taken from us, so only those willing to hew to a higher standard will escape the effortless, cheap diversions and addictions many are now drowning in. These techniques might get through to those who can examine their life critically and aim for something that's not only more utilitarian, but ethically better as well. I successfully put them to use while working with many health and weight loss clients for more than a decade. Filling the vacuum. Quote, if people would willingly return to sanity, what need of so many arts that minister to the belly? Seneca, Consolation of Helvia, 10.5. To start with, we need to acknowledge that for most people with healthy eating problems, the cessation or heavy restriction of ultra-processed food rips open one or more vacuums in their life. I've explained how virtue can fill those voids in theory, but how does this happen in practice? Pointing out the button that motivates people to fill their voids isn't enough. Pushing the button that motivates them to fill their voids isn't enough. The only chance for long-term success is helping them become enthusiastic, self-button-pushing machines, continuously rechristening the void and the actions surrounding it with meaning. Different people are amenable to different sorts of virtue-based arguments. The trick is obliquely probing till you have a good hunch as to what the most effective one might be. Of course, you should never call it virtue. Virtue won't sell, but ground it in real values and watch people change. If you can find an argument that will elevate and glorify a higher standard, you may provide them with something that fills the void. I'll break these out into several newsletters. First, let's talk about being a punk. Sticking it to the man. Quote, there is no slavery worse than that which is voluntary. Seneca, Letters 47. A teenager first helped me realize how powerful the slavery is uncool argument is for weight loss adherence. His father lost a lot of weight working with me, but was frustrated that his overweight son wouldn't give up his soda and junk food diet. He sent him to talk to me to see if I could get through to him. What pierced the veil of studied teenage sullenness and I don't knows was the truth every teenager already knows in their marrow. Adults are lame, suckers are uncool, and the line between rocking a hip brand and being a quote-unquote a cuck to one is quite thin. The funny thing is that teenagers, for all their sullen idiocy, are often better able to see truths about the world that adults miss. Many adults are kind of lame. They've sold their values for comfort and addictions. They've settled into self-willed slavery. Young people have historically, at least, adored Henry David Thoreau because he got this and expressed it with teenager-like disdain. Quote, "The gross feeder is a man in the larva state, and there are whole nations in that condition, nations without fancy or imagination, whose vast abdomens betray them." That's from Walden, chapter 11. A double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled study of more than 500 Texas 8th graders attempted to test rebellion from food slavery as a driver of change. The students read an expose on the food industry that covered manipulative and deceptive strategies used to make junk food more addictive and portray the products as healthy. It also included pictures of 4 executives and consultants of the food industry described as stereotypical, quote, controlling, hypocritical adults, unquote. I thought the essay was way too tame, and I don't buy the conspiracy aspect, which I've talked about previously. I would have said it more forcefully if I'd been trying to incite them. But researchers hoped the kids would choose healthy food as an act of rebellion and independent thinking. Later, unaware they were being observed, the students were offered drinks and snacks in an unrelated context, and there was a statistically significant decline in sugar and processed food intake. The number choosing unhealthy drinks dropped from 82% in the control to 75% in the expo. Later, the expose intervention group were angrier in response to sugary drink ads and less tempted to drink the sodas. Not an overwhelming response, but significant given the tepid intervention and enough to suggest there might be something to it. As for the overweight teenager, a similar argument landed. Nabisco, Mountain Dew, and middle-aged Frito-Lay spreadsheet warriors were trying to profit off human weakness. Did he want to go along with it and put himself in shackles? What does the body of a free person look like? What does a sovereign person eat? I played up the punk aspect of diet and how our lives can be a rebellion and worked with him a few times. I sent him some books. I'd heard from his father a year later that he'd lost a bunch of weight. In fact, he was mocking his father's addiction to whole food cookies. Better to have him burning with righteous insolence than enslaved. His father seemed to think so anyway. The talking heads would advise us that once access was taken care of, the right tool for junk food teenagers was, quote, nutrition education so they could, quote, make better choices. That's BS. This kid knew enough. He was glad to make bad choices. It was a passive rebellion against his parents and his subservient role in society. The desires of his father weren't high on his list of considerations, and arguments for the utility of healthy foods weren't going to land. Reaching him was best done by helping him see, without criticism or urging, that he was cuddled up to something servile he could rebel against. His angst did the rest. Insolence wasn't the goal, but this imperfect understanding had a closer proximity to virtue than Cheetos did. Unfortunately, this approach is limited by its rebellion against a specific social context. It's extrinsically motivated, whereas virtue and excellence is a bottomless well of intrinsic motivation. And of course, the argument only works if the messenger isn't a hypocrite. Kids and teenagers pay attention. They notice when adults are enslaved to their appetites, and who listens to a person like that? Alcoholics aren't great advocates for teetotaling. Self-willed slaves can't sell freedom. The argument works for doom scrolling too, and with adults, and can be made more subtle. I suspect this is why my article on escaping self-willed slavery is my second most popular of all time. If you're battling to eat better and trying to apply this to your life, I have a question for you. Do you want to remain enslaved? It's worse than enforced slavery, since those slaves are taken against their will. Do you want to be The weak-willed person who snaps the shackles around their own wrists and throat in return for nothing more significant than some temporary pleasure on your tongue? How many good things will you give up for that ephemeral pleasure? I'll end with the most punk of all ancient philosophers, Diogenes the Cynic. Quote, "Learn to live on lentils and you will not have to be subservient to the king." We'll go into more ways that this can be applied in future articles. Thanks for reading Socratic State of Mind. If you like this article, please like and share it, which helps more readers find my work. See you next time.